This podcast is powered by the pros at Paschal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPaschal.com.
Connor, how you doing today? Middle of May.
Gentlemen, doing really well. Can't complain. Life is good.
Yeah, I mean, so what's there to write about when there's always something to write about in college football? College football, we were just kicking around the other day, or the last segment, how, you know, the NFL is the master at dominating over the offseason. They're going to have the schedule released tomorrow. There's always something going on in the NFL. College football is kind of there. Are they there, or they need a little more?
They're there. The transfer portal has allowed it to be there in a lot of different ways. And there's stuff that's going on. We're going to have SEC spring meetings coming up in a little bit. Why they call it spring meetings, I don't know. It is not in the 90s here in my neck of the woods in Florida, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But nonetheless, there's plenty to write and talk about. I'm kind of trying to dig in more right now into the Oklahoma-Texas storylines. This is a good time of year to kind of sink your teeth into who those teams are, what their fans are saying, what people around the program are saying, how the year projects, what this is going to look like with them in the SEC. So that's kind of been my focus a little bit as of late. And there's, interesting questions to be asked, like who's going to lead the SEC in rushing? That's something we're digging into on the Saturday Down South podcast today. A question that I think is a lot harder to answer than what you would typically think, just based on the way that it usually plays out. But, yeah, there's always stuff to be able to talk about. That's what we do.
Is the quarterback at Texas, is he the best quarterback in the SEC? I mean, who's the number one quarterback in the SEC?
Yeah, man, that's a fair question. Like, I think Quinn Ewers coming back, if he's not one of your top three quarterbacks in all of college football, you probably are in the minority with that opinion, because what he did last year to be able to get Texas to the college football playoff was certainly impressive. But to me, it's his ability to dominate these big-time games. What he did against Alabama and then what he did in the Big 12 championship, I mean, putting that game away against Oklahoma State in the first half, he was unbelievable. He's got to be able to stay healthy. I have him right now as my number 2 quarterback coming back in the SEC behind Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck, what he did last year, answered a lot of questions that people had about what this post-Stetson Bennett era was going to look like. And, yeah, there's still a little bit of meat on the bone. I think you need to see him connect a little bit more on some of these downfield throws that are, stretching the field vertically 40, 50 yards. But other than that, it's hard not to like what he did in his first season as a starter. You can kind of forget that with how comfortable he looked at times getting Georgia off to that 12-0 start. So, yeah, that's probably how I would rank it right now.
I think the guys at EA Sports would probably agree with you, since we saw both Ewers and Beck's last names on the front of the college football game cover that came out the other day. I mean, that tells you, to me, that told you who's making the most money off of the cover, at least.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think that that's going to be part of this with NIL and all that. And I know there was a lot that was made about whether or not it was fair that, the athletes could opt in and only get like $600 and a copy of the game. And to me, I wasn't thinking of it like that at all. And based on the numbers so far that I know, Matt Brown, who does a great job being able to report about this stuff, I know based on the numbers that he's come out with, like, this is very much an opt-in, treat. That's more of a goodie bag as you leave the party sort of deal to be in this game. How about Donovan Edwards being the cover guy in many ways? Like, he's the most prominent player coming back for a Michigan team that, look, obviously has a lot of turnover, but a guy that was very much the second running back in that room behind Blake Corum, didn't even have 500 rushing yards in our first college football video game in over a decade. That's the guy that's featured prominently. I know Michigan fans won't push back on that, but I thought that was interesting.
Where do you have, I see on your rankings here, you did some post-spring SEC quarterback rankings. You got Taylor Green ranked 12th, on the back half there. What is it you see from Green, and where do you think he could end up moving into the top half quarterbacks in the SEC this next season?
I think so. I think his surroundings are really good if we are able to see improvement from the Arkansas offensive line. Massive if, not the first nor the last person to say that. And if these receivers look like what they're capable of. Now, he's got 3 big-bodied pass-catching targets that I think could be super quarterback-friendly, and that's all well and good. But what does it look like for him in those grenade games? Because that was kind of his issue at Boise State was, man, he'd have some of these games where he just didn't really look like it was coming together for him. Now, you've got somebody in Bobby Petrino that you would think is going to be a great mentor, somebody that's going to be in his ear in a really positive way that we didn't see last year with Dan Enos and KJ Jefferson, that relationship. But to me, the question about him getting into that top half and what that looks like, so much of it is going to be, can he cut down on those mistakes? Because I don't think Arkansas is really built to handle a guy that's going to make those mistakes. So if he can do that, that's a different conversation. But quarterback is deep in the SEC this year, and that will be no small feat to get there.
Connor, with LSU, it seems like their receiver, kind of how like Florida was in the 90s and the early 2000s. Which SEC squad has the best collection of receivers coming back this year?
It's a great question because there are probably 3 or 4 that have a really good, legitimate claim. But for me, I think that Ole Miss has the best group of pass catchers returning in the conference. They have a guy in Trey Harris who's one of the 3 or 4 probably best receivers in all of college football. They have a guy at Juice Wells who, was an all-SEC guy, one of the 2 best receivers coming into the league last year. Lost season it was for him. If he's healthy, look out. And then they still have a guy, Jordan Watkins, who is one of the leading returning receivers in the SEC. And, oh, by the way, Caden Prescorn, who was dominant in that bowl game in the Peach Bowl victory, and is probably going to be the first-team All-SEC tight end going into this year. He's going to be 25 years old. Like, they have depth there at the pass catcher spots that, to me, makes Ole Miss the number one choice. Mizzou has to be part of that conversation as well. Luther Burden III is the best returning receiver in college football. The development of Theo East last year was huge. They got Mookie Cooper coming back, another young tight end in Norfleet that they really like. So those would be kind of the 2. And then Oklahoma, depth for days in what they have. Drake Stoops is kind of the only guy that they really lost, and they replaced him with Deion Burks from Purdue, an all Big Ten guy. So, yeah, there is a lot to like, I think, at the top with some of these pass-catching groups in the SEC.
Let me tell you, I had an interesting conversation about the newest Razorback wide receiver with some baseball coaches over the weekend. Now, you usually wouldn't put those things together. You saw about Monte Harrison, who played Major League Baseball 10 years, in the minors as well, center fielder, base stealer. He's now committed to play at Arkansas as a wide receiver, 6'3", 220. I'm standing in the dugout on, I think it was Friday, during batting practice. I'm talking with Matt Hobbs, our pitching coach, and I'm like, what do you think about the new receiver that they've signed? He's a baseball player. He was like, I recruited him to Mizzou to play for us. I mean, he was, and Bobby Warnes, who's our first base coach, played against Harrison in the Kansas City area where he's from. It's just 28-year-old wide receiver is going to make some people kind of raise their eyebrows or roll their eyes. I think it could work out. The guy's supposed to be an amazing athlete. It's just getting used to football again.
Wouldn't it be nice to be 28 years old and think about, what do I want to do with the next chapter of my life? Oh, you know what? Actually, let me go back. Let me just play in the toughest conference in college football at a skill position. Let me just see if I can pick this up again and actually have that opportunity available. I mean, what a crazy thought. And I'm not hating the guy for doing that, but some of us are blessed with unbelievable gifts, and some of us are able to take advantage of those. And I mean, credit the guy for being able to have this opportunity available. But one of the interesting storylines probably for this Arkansas team this year.
So I was looking at the baseball standings today in the SEC, and on their Road to Hoover page, where they just detail what all the seeding looks like if the season ended today, and they got all the tiebreakers on the right side. I know you just wrote about this. We are about to have a 16-team league with no divisions for football. They're still playing 8 games. We have no idea what the tiebreakers will look like. And the top 2 teams are supposed to play for the SEC championship. As far as SEC record's concerned, you know somebody's going to finish in a tie. How are we going to do this?
You came to the right place, Phil. You really did. Look, I do think they're going to hash this out at the SEC spring meeting. But if they do want to just, hop on SaturdayDownSouth.com and see a certain writer who is, looking for things to be able to write about in May and wants to just copy and paste this guideline that, this specific writer had, I think that'd be a good idea, in my very biased opinion. We got to figure this out. We have to figure this out, because in a divisionless world, where there is still a conference championship, that sort of thing matters, and it can absolutely come into play. And it's not necessarily an easy thing to figure out. And that's why I wanted to be able to look at this, because there's a good chance that you're going to have some of these where you don't have that head-to-head advantage to be able to decide that. All right, so what would a second tiebreaker look like? What about total victories against SEC teams that finish with a winning conference record? Essentially, did you beat good teams in conference play? That could come into play. What about something like a third tiebreaker of total conference wins among teams beaten in SEC play, which is really wordy, but it's kind of just like SEC imperialism, and you just take whatever sort of wins that the team that you beat had. So that's kind of the way that you could look at something like this that isn't just straight scoring margin, because I don't want to get into a world in which an SEC championship is decided by whether or not you beat Vanderbilt by 45 or 28. I don't really want that, but that would just be one way to go about it if I were making suggestions.
I'm sure some of those folks have your phone number, so they might want to have it at the ready, because that's a lot of thought that you put into something that who knows if they're going to go with your ideas anyway.
Yeah, they should. I've come up with some horrible ideas, just absolutely horrible ideas that blow up in my face. And look, this one, at least as of this juncture yet, wherein we haven't seen this actually play out, and I actually applied it to a few examples and a few seasons where it would have been relevant, just to make sure that I wasn't totally crazy for coming up with some of these tiebreakers. But look, as of right now, it still checks out, and it's still perfectly fine. So, I'm definitely willing to take all the credit if they want to just take my ideas.
Connor, always appreciate you hopping on. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, appreciate it.
BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.